Hello there, Mandy here. Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart is not just a podcast. It's also a book, a free online grief group, and a one-on-one private coaching practice. If you are interested in learning more, visit mandykapehart.com to find out how restorative grief can help you heal heart, mind, body, and spirit. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 244, titled Avoiding Advice When You Walk Beside Grievers. Have you ever sat with someone who is grieving and felt completely unsure of what to say? You want to help, but the right words seem impossible to find. What do you do when there is no fix, no solution, and no easy path to follow? Grief is one of those moments that reminds me how powerless I can feel in the face of someone else's pain. The first thing I want to say is this. Sometimes the most important thing I can do for a griever is just be there. I do not need to have all the answers or any answers. I don't need to solve their problems. I don't need to cheer them up or make them more comfortable or myself more comfortable. I don't need to offer advice. I just sit. I let them feel what they feel, and I listen with my whole self. I think often about the work of Michael Bungay-Stanier and his teaching about staying curious a little bit longer. He talks about how when we allow pauses and thoughtful questions to live in the middle of a conversation with space, we create the space for deeper understanding to emerge. And that's exactly what happens in our grief work. It is not about being silent in a shallow way. It's not about waiting for our turn to speak. It's about listening, deep listening. For those of you who listened to our conversation with Emily Casriel, and asking questions that help someone express what is beneath the surface. Sometimes what someone needs most is not a solution, but my full attention. One story that has stuck with me comes from the piece I wrote about the long spoons. I like to tell it this way. In one version of paradise, people had everything they could possibly want. They had food, abundance, and beauty, but they could not feed themselves because the spoons were too long to reach their own mouths. They were surrounded by nourishment, yet starving. Are you familiar with this tale? In the next room, people used those same long spoons, feeding the person across from them instead of trying to care just for themselves. And they thrived. They flourished. They lived in abundance, not because they took care of themselves alone, but because they took care of each other. That story always reminds me that grief is not a solo adventure. When our internal work feels deeply personal, even then, the act of holding space for someone else's pain is a necessary communal act of care and connection. And listen, when you are grieving, I know people often recoil. They'll worry, they will say the wrong thing, make it worse, or intrude on something sacred. I see it happen all the time, and so those people say nothing. But silence in those moments often feels like absence rather than support, right? And think about a time you might have operated in that manner. You stayed silent because you didn't want to intrude, and then it feels like you don't acknowledge, or maybe you are accused of being distant. This is why I try to open the space. I might say something gentle like, I've been thinking about you. How are you doing today? Or if I hear that the person needs a little support, or I might say something like, if you want to talk about what's been on your mind, I'm here. And if you don't, just know that I am here. These openings, however you start them, communicate that we're willing to be present. That alone can be comforting. Once I've opened up that space, however, the next step is to actually deeply listen. Not just hear, but to pay attention to the words, the tone, the pauses, and even the things that are left unsaid. Reflective listening tells the person I am truly present with them, that their experience is seen and acknowledged. And it's not what you see in movies like, yes, and then repeating it directly back, but it can be something as simple as saying, it sounds like this has been really heavy for you. That validates their experience in a way that advice never could. I focus on asking questions and being curious rather than offering solutions as well. I might ask, would it help to talk about a memory with them? Or is there a small way I can support you today? Rather than assuming how they're feeling or what they might need, I invite them to express their needs. And this is exactly what Michael Bungay Stanier talks about in his coaching work. People often already know what they need, but they've not been given room or permission to voice it. By staying curious a bit longer, we give them that space, and that is an invaluable gift. So that once we have listened and asked thoughtful questions, we can offer support that aligns with what the grieving person actually needs and wants. And this doesn't mean rescuing them or doing everything for them. It doesn't mean dumping money in their path. It means helping them carry the weight of their grief without taking it from them. It could be as simple as sitting together in quiet, helping with meals, dropping off a cup of coffee, or checking in on them regularly. The key is that my support is shaped by the needs they have articulated, not by what I think would be helpful or by what would help me feel more comfortable or better about them. Supporting someone through grief also teaches me lessons I can bring into my coaching work. When I practice presence, deep listening, asking questions instead of giving advice, and offering support without controlling the narrative, I am engaging myself in empathy, patience, and humility. I learn to resist the urge to fix everything. I learn to make it okay that things are uncomfortable and to value their journey and their experience more than my own need to feel comfortable or have the right answer. These are the same skills that make someone a thoughtful coach or leader, and they are amplified when in the context of grief. Because we know that grief is not a problem to solve. It is a process to witness. So when I approach it with curiosity, compassion, and presence, I create space for healing that no advice could ever provide. The gift I give someone in grief is not a solution. It is my attention. It is my willingness to walk beside them without judgment or hurry. And more often than not, that presence becomes the most comforting support they could receive. I also pay attention to the small, consistent acts of presence. Supporting someone is not just about the big gestures or the deep conversations because it does not have a defined timeline. It can ebb and flow for months or years and decades, and people around the grieving person often move on from the content, the topic, long before the feelings do. Checking in, offering a meal when it feels uncomfortable, sending a message to say I'm thinking of them, or asking a thoughtful question weeks or months later can matter more than I realize. And these small acts add up. They continue to communicate that the person I care about is not alone and that their grief is still valid and seen. When I think about how this applies more broadly, whether in coaching, leadership, or everyday relationships, I see a common thread: staying curious longer, listening deeply, and offering support without control helps build trust. It helps deepen connection, and it helps others feel genuinely valued in a way that advice cannot replicate. Grief reminds me that I can't control everything. I can't fix it, but I can be present. I can listen. I can ask questions that help others find their own path forward. And I can offer support that respects their experience and honors their humanity. When I do that, I do more than help someone through a moment of loss. I demonstrate the transformative power of my presence, of anyone's presence, the generosity of curiosity, and the profound impact of walking beside another human being when they need it the most. Thank you for listening to episode 244 of Restorative Grief. We all fall into the advice trap. No one is immune. So if you take anything from this, just remember, be here, really listen, and don't believe that you have to fix everything or that you can. Ask the questions that matter. Give people the space to figure things out and stay curious just a little longer. That's where the real connection happens. And honestly, doing this not only helps the people you care for, it makes you a better coach, a better friend, and a better human along the way. If this is your first time listening to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart, I'm just so grateful you found your way here. Thank you to the patrons of this show, past and present, who support the Restorative Grief community by keeping these episodes alive. Check out the show notes if you're interested in learning more about becoming a patron of the work for as little as $2 a month and the benefits you'll receive. Be sure to subscribe and, of course, leave a review as well. And as always, before we go, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.